the king of all comfort foods, pizza. So first we're gonna make the dough. So into 350 grams of warm water goes in 1.5 grams of dry active yeast, and we're gonna put that to the side so it can start to activate. And into a bowl goes 500 grams of 00 flour and 13 grams of salt. I'm gonna mix that all together. And once your yeast and water mixture is bubbly, we're gonna add that to our flour and salt mixture, and we're gonna mix that with a fork till it starts to combine. Don't worry about going too crazy here because we're gonna let this sit for about 20 minutes after that, and it's gonna kind of hydrate. And then from there, we're gonna work it again. So kind of give it a mix till it becomes a shaggy mess. It's gonna be extremely sticky. Do not worry, do not add more flour. Don't panic. A lot of times people here will add too much flour and then you will actually get a dry dough and it will kind of mess up the ratio. Don't worry, it's supposed to be wet, it's supposed to be sticky, it's supposed to be a mess. So you can go ahead and use your hand and just kind of mix it all together. And then from here, we're gonna cover this bowl with saran wrap, leave it at room temperature or kind of in the warmest part of your kitchen, about 75 degrees. And we're gonna let that sit for 20 minutes to hydrate before touching it again. So after 20 minutes, you're gonna get another bowl and we're gonna lightly oil this, kind of move it around. This is where we're gonna do our bulk fermentation. Then quickly flour your work surface. We're gonna use 00, use the flour that you used for the dough. It's more of a pet peeve of mine. I just like to use the same flour on the work surface that you use to make the dough. And we're gonna turn this dough out onto the worktop. It shouldn't have risen very much, but you'll notice that everything's a little more cohesive. It's been hydrated, it's still extremely sticky. So do put a little bit of flour on your hands, but do not worry if it hasn't risen very much. This next part is where you're gonna see a lot of that rising happening. So we're just gonna kind of knead this dough, kind of just move it around, develop a little bit of gluten. As the gluten is developed, the dough will become less sticky. So just kind of move it around until it gets a nice taut surface. And we're just gonna keep doing that. It should only take about 1.5 to 2 minutes. And I just knead it around and we're gonna make it into a little ball, and then into that oiled bowl it will go, covered in saran wrap. I'm gonna let that sit there for 2 hours or till doubled in size. Again, try to leave it in the warmest part of your kitchen, and it's gonna help get that rising. So after the 2 hours, we're going to flour a sheet tray, and we're gonna flour this generously because this is where the dough is gonna live for the next 24 to 48 hours, depending when you wanna bake or cook the pizza. So onto the sheet tray goes the flour, and then a little bit of flour onto a work surface, and we're gonna begin to shape our pizzas. So we're gonna remove our dough from the bowl, and we're going to portion this into 4 equal sizes. You can definitely weigh this out. Here I just eyeball it, it's totally okay. And you can notice that the dough has become much larger and much shinier and smoother, and it's just through hydration and fermentation that this has happened. And we're gonna split this just with the knife. And from here, we're just gonna kind of grab each corner of the dough and bring it into the middle and begin to make a ball. So you're just gonna kind of go around in a circle, pinch it in the center until you get the shape of a ball, and then we're gonna turn it 90 degrees while pulling towards us. There we go, 90 degrees, pull towards you, 90 degrees, pull towards you, and we're gonna get a nice taut surface. You can also kind of do that cupping motion where you use the bottoms of your pinkies and rotate it and kind of push and close at the bottom, and this is going to create a nice taut surface so that when it does ferment, it stays in that shape. This is important. If you don't do this, when it does do its fermentation in the fridge, when you open it up in the next 24 or 48 hours, you're going to have a blob. It's going to look like this big pancake, and it's going to be a pain. And normally what happens is they kind of spread out and they fall in and push into each other, and it just turns into one large dough mass, and you're going to pull your hair out. So go ahead and do this with all the pieces of dough. I'm gonna show you a different angle now, kind of from the top so you can see what it looks like, where you just kind of grab, pinch those sides into the center, push down, and you're gonna notice that it gets a little taut, it gets a little harder. And then once you get to that point, you're gonna flip it over and you're gonna pull towards you, rotate 90 degrees, pull towards you, rotate 90 degrees, and then using that cup motion as your pinkies kind of close off that bottom, kind of seal it. You want to make this as tight as you can. Do be careful, if you go too tight, you will split the top of the surface and you'll have to repeat again, because once it splits, it's gonna spill and it's gonna be a disaster anyways. So take your time, don't rush this. It's very important that you do this right. So once you've shaped all your dough, onto the sheet tray it goes, and we're going to flour the tops of the balls just so that they don't stick to the saran wrap. And we're gonna saran wrap this, and into the fridge it goes for 24 or 48 hours. The longer it's in the fridge, the more sour and funky it gets and the more delicious. So it's been 48 hours, you can tell by the new shirt. And we're gonna make our sauce. So 1 can of San Marzano tomatoes, peeled. Gonna drain those so there's not a lot of liquid in them, and we're gonna add 2 cloves of garlic, about a 1/4 cup of extra virgin olive oil, about a 1/4 bunch of basil, and we're gonna put this onto a blender and we're gonna blend this. We're not gonna cook this sauce, it's gonna be a raw sauce. And we're gonna season it here too, because this is what's gonna season your pizza. So make sure it's a little saltier than you think it should be. We're just gonna blend this till everything is mixed together, and we're gonna put this to the side. And then of course, no pizza is a pizza without mozzarella. So whole milk, low moisture mozzarella, and we're gonna slice this into thin pieces. And we're gonna leave this at room temperature, and it's just gonna melt a little easier that way when you do cook it. And then we're also gonna do a little bit of onion on one of the pizzas. So just a regular whole onion onto a mandolin, very thin, because we're gonna put these onto the pizza raw, so we want them to cook in the oven. And right now in our garden, we have cherry tomatoes everywhere. So just a couple fresh cherry tomatoes, also raw. And we're just going to cut these in half, and we're gonna put these on top of the pizza right before going into the oven. And we're gonna preheat our oven as hot as it can go. Mine goes up to 550, and you're gonna throw in as many sheet trays as you can, because this is gonna keep that temperature up there. You want it extremely hot. Make sure you pull your dough out about 30 minutes before baking though, so it is at room temperature. And then onto a work surface, a lot of flour, and we're gonna begin to shape our dough. Here I'm going to use a baking tray. So this is the bottom of a pan for making pies, and we're going to cover this with a little bit of semolina, and this is what we're going to use as our pizza peel to put into the oven in case you don't actually have a peel. Works perfectly. You just want to make sure you have the right size so none of the dough is hanging over. So take your dough, we're going to flour both sides, and then kind of with your fingers we're going to make a circle around the edge, pretending that what is on the outside is the crust, because it will be. So just kind of with your fingers press down the middle, leaving a little lump around the side, and then with your knuckles we're going to move clockwise little by little, and it's going to begin to stretch out. Take your time, it will tear if you're not careful, but the pizza dough is a little stronger than you think it is. So with your knuckles you're just going to go through until you can see your hands through that dough, and then onto your pizza peel it goes. Kind of line it up, and if there's any sticking, just add a little bit of flour, lift that dough up, and throw that flour underneath, and it will keep it from sticking. And now it's time to build our pizza. So just a little bit of sauce goes a long way. So a couple spoonfuls of sauce, and we're just going to spread this evenly throughout the pizza, right to the edge. Don't go all the way over because you do want your crust, but it's okay if you get a little close. It's just going to brown a little more. then I'm gonna add a little bit of mascarpone, just a couple dollops here and there. This is gonna add a little bit of sweetness. It's not over the top sweet. This is pretty dry in terms of sweetness levels, mascarpone, and it's just really good, nice and creamy pizza. And then of course, lots of mozzarella. Depends how much you like. I like to finish mine with a little bit of Parmesan at the end, so I don't go too crazy with the mozzarella at the beginning. And into the oven we go. So in the oven we have a sheet tray upside down, and we're gonna just shimmy that pizza on there. Take your time, and we're gonna close that oven door immediately. We're gonna check on it after about a minute, make sure it's unsticking, and we're gonna close it again. After about 2 minutes, we're gonna open it up, pull it out, and we're gonna rotate the pizza so that it's evenly cooked. You can notice that in the back where the oven is hotter, it's browning a little faster. So we're just gonna give it a little rotation, and then into the oven again, close it for another 2 minutes. And then about 5 to 6 minutes in, you're gonna turn on your broiler, and we're gonna get that top crust nice and dark, melt that cheese. Make sure the bottom is nice and hard and crispy, and then out of the oven it goes. Now we do have a pizza oven, so I'm gonna show you what that looks like. Again, to shape it, just another view, another different. We're outside, so why not? And then onto the pizza peel, just like before, semolina. This is just gonna keep it from sticking. So you're gonna grab your dough and work around the sides of it with your fingers, creating the center of the pizza, and then with your knuckles, working clockwise, kind of inch your way across. Take your time, don't rush this. And then our pizza oven gets up to about 750 to 900 degrees, so it's great for cooking pizzas because the hotter the better. So our pizza's cooking about 90 seconds, depends on how hot the oven is. The first pizza always takes a little bit longer. So you're gonna add a little bit of your sauce, like always, spread it nice and even, and then add your toppings. And again, we're just gonna carefully put our pizza in and just kind of shake it off. As soon as it hits that stone, it kind of sticks, and we're gonna let it sit there, and we're not gonna touch it. After about 20 seconds, give it a little shake, make sure it's unsticking, and we're gonna give it a little rotation. Again, the back of the oven is always a little hotter, so we're gonna make sure that each side is cooking evenly. Always check your crust, make sure it's not burning, but that it is getting nice and brown, because you always want that nice, tough crust. And here you can see that the top is bubbling, the cheese is melted, the dough is cooked. We got a nice brown crust on the bottom, and then from here, we're gonna take it out and on to a cutting board they go. All right, so here are all the pizzas. Onions, tomatoes, a margarita, a little bit of everything. I personally like to finish with raw, or I guess non-cooked prosciutto. I find if you cook prosciutto, it just becomes a little salty. So I like to finish it with prosciutto. When the pizza's nice and hot, kind of the fat melts. It's absolutely delicious. Also, don't cut into your pizzas right away because you will burn your mouth. Plus, they will spill out a little bit. That cheese is really melty, and it will, as you cut it, it will kind of spill. So we're just gonna cover a couple of them with prosciutto, a little bit of fresh basil. I like to put a little bit of olive oil around the crust as they come out, just to add a little bit of color and flavor. And then we're gonna top them with a little bit of pecorino, just to add a little bit of tang, a little more cheese, and then some balsamic extract. And if you enjoyed that video, please give it a like. And if you want to see more things like this, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you all